Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. In part one, I showed you how to make this Griselda type beat. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to mix it. So let's get started. First step, send everything to the mixer. Let's go to the channel rack, double click, hit Control L. If you don't see the numbers, hit Alt M to reveal these numbers here. These are the track numbers. So once everything is in the mixer, we can handle individual sounds individually, and then we can edit stuff per sound. So the easy way to do this, in my opinion, is we're mixing acoustic drums so that you don't use the same rules as synthetic drums for trap. We're going to group all these drums and we're going to create a group track, or just find a blank mixer insert and right click, route to this track only. So I already have a drum track made for this video. So let's right click, route to this track only. You guys will get the project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. Once you segment your song into 4 things, you have the top line, which is your melody, your singable melody, your harmony section, which is like your chords and stuff. Then you have the contrast layer, which is usually your bass and counter melodies. And then you have the 4th section, which is the rhythm section. So we're grouping stuff into groups to make it easier to make moves during the mixing process. So here we have the drums group. We could color this a certain color. I like coloring stuff in Pro Tools because it's just easier to see. So we only have one bass, so let's just make the bass like blue. And then let's call these top line melodies. So the best thing you guys could do is just organize your mix. I think too many people have tracks all over the place, and that's why they get confused while mixing, because it's not organized. I think these are all the top lines we have. We're going to right click and route to this track only. And just give it a color, like a different color. So now I see, okay, I have 3 groups: drums, bass, top line, and harmony. I have 4 groups. Let's add this as yellow. So now instead of me thinking of 50 tracks, I'm thinking of 4 things. So it's a lot easier to mix 4 things than it is to mix 50 things. Give this a different color here. Okay, so first I like to start with the drum impact, because that's usually the heart of my hip hop beats. So let's start with the drums. Now, as a group, I just need to ask, what am I trying to do with the drums? Do I want them to hit harder? Do I want them to have more saturation? What is the goal for my drums? Are they just, do they need to be fitting in the pocket and creating a groove? Like, what is the purpose of the drums here? For me, the kick needs to hit a little bit harder. We need knock out of the kick, but also the snare to pop. So knock, pop, like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is load up, where is it here? The virtual mix rack from Steven Slate. They have a really good plugin in here, which is insane. And let me X out of all this stuff. So I'm using this on the group of sounds here. What I want to do is load up the transient shaper. So let's scroll down and we're going to look for transient shaper. Okay, the reason I'm using this is because we can segment by frequency the stuff that we want to boost, the ups and downs of, and the things we want to sustain, like the snare, for example. So let's say I want the kick to be more pokey so that it comes through like that. We're going to turn up the transient shaper. So this is making all of like the snare pop and the kick. Which is cool, but let's say we just want the kick to pop. Let's lower this focus here. The kick usually lives below 100 Hertz. So now it's only pushing that kick. Now the cool part is that this has a saturation knob. That's what I love about it. So we're going to push the saturation knob. And what it's doing with the kick is just adding that aggressive harmonic content that we need to cut through. Let's exaggerate. Okay, so now you guys can feel that kick. So I'm going to push it until I hear it, because this will save me some moves when it comes to the individual sounds themselves. Nextly, let's work on the sustain. Let's decide if we want to sustain the snare or not. But again, we're not going to sustain the kick. So let's not focus on anything below like 150. So here we're capturing pretty much the whole sound. That's why this one's a little bit more difficult. I would rather use the sustain on the individual sound because it's only listening to the snare as opposed to listening to everything. So I think we're going to mess with the sustain on the snare itself or use a compressor for that. And then we have buttons down here. So that's, I think we get solo. So this is what it's adding to the drum. You could even feel that knock. It goes. Poof. Okay, so that's where we're adding to the sound. Okay, now let's go to the individual sound. Let's start with the kick here. My favorite thing to do is boost 60 or 75 hertz on the kick. This is my favorite thing because I tested in my car and that's where the car shakes and rattles. So 60, I'm going to boost that. Deciding between the two is just a matter of where does the kick hit closer to. So in this case, it hits closer to 60. And I just boost until I start feeling the kick. Now with acoustic stuff, you could really boost it because with synthetic stuff, it's easier to have more information down here. Whereas acoustic stuff, you don't always have a lot of information in the subs. So I boosted that 10 dB. So when people tell you to only boost 3 dB and 4 dB, it's like, bro, like you need to know the objective of what you're trying to do. I'm trying to focus energy at 60 hertz so that it vibrates the car. Until it vibrates the car and my headphones, I'm going to keep boosting. Now let's work on the snare. Different snares have different objectives. There's no like right or wrong way here, but let's do a virtual mix rack. I'm going to use the distressor first because that's the most classic sound for a snare. But again, you got to remember which genre you're mixing for. If it's hip hop, you might want to crunch the snare. So you might want to run it through clippers as opposed to a compressor. But without boring you guys to tears about the nuance, let's load up their, what the heck is it called? They named everything different for, I guess, copyright purposes. So I got to remember what the heck the name was. It is called the, I know by its look, is that it? Here it is, the FG Stress. Okay, I was stressing trying to find that. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is, I like to lower my attack of the compressor, and let's solo the snare so we're not listening to all the. All right, so let's solo the snare. And why are we not hearing anything? Where's our snare? Okay, so our snare mic got muted apparently. Let's figure out why this is mute. It's weird. It's like not playing through this. Now let's figure out why it's not playing. Maybe I have something muted and don't even know. Wonder why it's doing this. Maybe it's just this preset. I don't know. All right, so I don't know what I did. I must have hit like a mute button or a solo button or something by accident without realizing it. So let's do that again. We're gonna load up the FG Stress, which is the, it models the Distressor, which is a classic compressor for a snare, or any drum really. Let's do a fast attack. Oh, I turned the input knob thinking it was the attack time. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Okay, that was my mistake. I meant to move the attack knob and I moved the input knob. Okay, so now we're gonna lower the attack time. So what I'm listening for is like, what curvature of the snare do I want? Do I want it to snap through, or do I just want the compressor to just turn it up basically and add a little harmonics? So here, the lower the attack, the snappier it becomes. And to get more tone, we're gonna push the input. So hear that sharp. Let's start lowering the attack time here. I mean, increasing the attack time. Okay, so it's a fine balance of like pushing the input and messing with the attack. And making sure we're not too loud on the output. So I like the tone, it's just a little bright. You can also add distortion or harmonic distortion to the sound. I don't think the snare needs it, but if it had more of the room in the mic, you could exaggerate the room with these distortions. So again, it's okay, you know, it's not like making or breaking the sound. Another thing we could do though, which is our primary focus though, is this transient shaper. We can sustain the sound. Now the sound's kind of quiet, so let's turn this distortion back on. So now we're picking up the room mic, or the room part of the mic. So it's adding that texture as well as shaping the snare. And my ear just likes that natural texture feel. I don't know if they have a clipper inside of here. Let me see. So I don't know their version of like a clipping plugin, but what I would do at this point is add a clipper at the end of the chain to really emphasize some harmonic content. So here's before, just very kind of like a wood stick that's just there. Here's after. And I'm level matching it. So again, here's before. So before it's hitting at -13. Pull it down. Now, as I pull it down, it's messing with the input and output volume, but hopefully you guys can tell. You know, let me copy this. All right, so here's the before. So we're sitting at what, -9, -8. So just listen to how thin that snare feels. Now here's after. Let's level match. So we're sitting at the same exact spot, -9. It sounds so much more full. That's the power of mixing. We went from like a wood stick, literally it sounded like click, and now it's like pah. I still think it could be toned down around like 3K. It's a little sharp. Yeah, here it is, 2K. Okay, let's blend this in with the other drums. Now, with acoustic drums, you have more than one microphone picking up the snare. You have the overheads, which is like over the whole drum kit. You have the actual snare mic. You have the floor mics. So you can have one sound being picked up in multiple mics. So for me, the overheads are more of like, how do we make this drum kit feel more wide and glued together? So the overheads, I usually think about compression most of the time, or widening out the sound. See how we're picking up that room texture, but we have a lot of that texture from the snare mic. So we don't necessarily need to like have these really overlay each other here. I will say the snare mic is a lot brighter, that's for sure. So let's add a high shelf here so we're not adding too much high frequency information. Roll off some of the high frequencies. Okay, so now we're going to deal with phase issues because these two microphones are in distance, further away from each other. So there's some distance there, which means time takes more time to travel from one mic to the next, which causes a delay in time. So we could simply just move the overhead mics over to like try to line up the audio a little bit clearer. So what I'm looking at is the overhead snare versus the snare drum. It's a little difficult. So what I'm going to do is move these down. And then I'm just going to put up a grid. Let's go to snap to grid 1/4 beat. Okay, so there, it's kind of easy to see. Let's see if we can get any sharper. Let's do 1/4 step. Okay, so 1/4 step gives us a more microscopic grid. So all I'm looking for is where does the snare hit on this mic versus the overhead mic? And then can we move it even a smidget over to the left or the right to make those line up more accurately? Now, again, it's really hard to see because I can't zoom in any further in FL. So I could tell, here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab a slice tool, hit Shift Alt, and just use this tool to see like the time difference. So I'm going to line up where the snare has its peak versus the overheads. So they're mostly lined up. It's just the snare is like a little bit ahead of the overheads by like probably a millisecond. Okay, so the snare is a little bit early. So we're going to grab the snare mic and just hit Alt and then try to left click and line it up. This is so microscopically like a millisecond away that instead of doing it this way, it would probably be best to use a delay plugin of some sort. So I'm going to do that instead. So we're going to go to the snare mic, add Fruity Delay 3. We're not going to use it as a delay. We're going to turn the dry down, turn the feedback all the way down, turn tempo sync off. And basically we're just nudging the audio to the right with this knob here. So let's hear it combined with the overheads. So I'm going to exaggerate. So now you guys can hear the time delay. So it goes dum dum. So one mic is the overhead, the second mic is the snare mic. Just to confirm that you're not hearing the delay, I'll pan one to the left and one to the right. So the overhead's on the left, the snare's on the right. So these are in fact two different mics. You're not hearing a delay in the delay plugin. Okay, so what we're doing here is simply trying to line up the timing. So it's just like tuning a string. You start lower frequencies and go up. So I'm going to start with a big time delay and then go down. Now the technical time here is 3 milliseconds in the top left. And then I'll ask myself, does this sound more impactful at this time or not? So we're going to turn the plugin on and off. So my ear likes the delay. Okay, so that's 3 milliseconds of delay. So very microscopic. So again, but if you keep hearing like a chorusy sound or like a phasey, washy sound, that's because the time's not lining up. Okay, so now we know that. Now let's pick the best qualities of the overheads versus the snare. Now in this mix, let's see the importance of the overhead, because sometimes you could just turn the overheads down and treat it like a room reverb. Let's see how much life it takes away from the track. For me, the overheads just add impact. So what I'll do is just turn that down for now, and then we'll mix it in the actual drums bus, which it already has been mixed. So nothing to really add or take away. So let's hear all this stuff without. Here's without the plugins. Listen to how like flat it sounds. Here's width. I'm going to do something just to see if it blends in this type of track. We're going to squash the life out of the overheads using a, I wish there was like a default. Oh, there is. Okay. So we're going to use a, either an 1176. Let's do the blue face. So now I'm just going to squash the compressor basically. Let's turn the output down first. So I'm trying to pull out the tone of the room of the overheads. Treat it like a room mic more so. Make the attack faster. So for this genre, I think having the stuff not as bright. So let's, what is this here? CS lift. All right, so this is like a low and high. So I'm adding like a muddy room sound to the drums by boosting the lows and then compressing the sound so that we're trying to adjust all of the sounds in the room, bringing them to the forefront, and then I'm boosting like the low mids and lows. So now we have this like this type of tone, but it's like a dark. So I'll turn it off. So I'm adding this smeary kind of dark 90s type of smacky hip hop sound and blending it in as like a sound effect. Okay, so we could turn this down. Again, I'm treating it mentally like a room reverb or like a reverb effect. So I'm just turning that down. Let's work on this bass. So my favorite thing to do on especially like acoustic or synth stuff is Spectre. And most people think this is an EQ, but it adds harmonic content. So different modes, if you switch these modes, they add different amounts of harmonic content. So my favorite frequencies, again, 60 or 75. Let's boost to 75 first. See which one resonates more. I think 60 might be more. There we go. Definitely a 60. Feel that it like goes, you can feel it. Let's pull this down a little bit. Now if you like certain high frequencies in the bass, we could boost those here. But for this track, I don't want a lot of high frequencies. So making it cleaner is not better. Okay, in this track. Now, from what I can hear, it has like stereo stuff. So what I'll do is make the mixer bigger and click this little button here, view extra volume stereo properties. And I want to see what it sounds like fully mono. So it sounds very big, even though it's mono. It sounds very wide. So right now it's mono. Let's hear what it sounds like. Can't tell if it has stereo information. So for that reason, I'm going to pull up the Isotope Ozone. Where's it at? Imager. And I want to just see, do we have side information? Because if we have side information, I could do cool stuff on the sides of the bass. So the bass wasn't even stereo. So let's stereoize the bass. Mode 2. Is this glitching? I can't tell. Oh, duh. I didn't turn it on. So now we're eating up some of the side information and filling out the track. We got to be careful not to overly stereoize stuff because we can just basically make everything on the sides, which does the opposite. I forgot we have pads in here, so making it wide might not be the best option here. So here's before. See how it gets lost when I make it wider? So wider does not mean better. Cleaner does not mean better. I think the bass is what the bass is. Okay, so we covered the bass, the drums so far. Now let's cover the harmony. So again, people tell you not to like solo stuff, but you have to understand like what you're trying to do. And if you can't hear what you're trying to do, you're just tricking yourself into thinking you're doing something. So for that reason, I think soloing is important in mixing, even though most people tell you not to solo. So now we're listening to the harmony in the top line. Let's turn off the top line actually. And let's open up the imager just to see if we can widen this out a little bit without overly doing it. So the sound is pretty wide already, but let's see what it sounds like if we take it a little notch further. So now it really dominates the entire stereo field. In this sound, there's nothing I need to adjust. If anything, I could add that like smacky sound with a compressor of some sort. Let's mess with the Steven Slate stuff real quick. And we don't need any adjustment to the sound. I want to make that very clear. We don't need anything on the sound right now. If we made it brighter, we would make it worse. It wouldn't fit into the vibe. But let's add the air EQ just to see. Okay, this isn't as aggressive as I thought it'd be. See how I'm just boosting it until I hear it? I'm not worried about a number. So we can boost almost 12 dB here without it losing the vibe. Let's run it through a compressor. So the tone can input. Let's blend in with the mix level here at this compression. So here I can hear there's some low frequencies that are starting to mask that bass. Because if we look at the bass, it lives in a certain region. So it pretty much lives from about 50 hertz to about 250. I know it has harmonics, but that's where the meat of the sound is, about 50 to 250. In the pad, I remember I started playing low bass notes. So in that area, it's starting to clash. Now we could sidechain it and make this like really complex thing. But for the video, let's just make it super simple and just cut the frequencies in the pad. So the pad right now is playing 200 to whatever, but at the later part of the song, it plays lower frequencies. See how we have lower information here? So that's not in the beginning of the song. So a simple way to just take care of this for this specific sound is simply to add a low shelf, pardon me. And we're gonna do something like this. Why does it look weird? Let me see. I guess the Q's all the way up. Boom. All right, so we're gonna cut this at about just under that 200 mark, because we don't really need that bass because we already have the bass occupying that space. Turn that top line down a little bit. Now, as I was recording the top line, I actually added chorus in real time to the sound, so it widens over time and then it goes back narrow and it widens. So I did that in the recording itself. You could add chorus to add stereo width. So now that I mixed like all the edits and everything, so let's look at like what did we add so far. On the drums, I added a transient shaper to only the low end. On the kick drum, we added 60 hertz, boosting at 10 dB to really feel that knock out of the kick. On the overheads, we have a compressor squashing the sound and an EQ lifting up that high end. Then we have on the snare, we have a distressor to basically just kind of clamp down on the snare. We use sustain to pull up some of the room, like texture of the snare. running it through a clipper. I didn't really push the clipper too hard, but I'm just taking off like unnecessary energy on the snare transients. And then we're lowering the high frequency so the snare doesn't get too bitey for this vibe. And I used the Fruity Delay 3 to line up the snare manually by just using a delay to push the snare to the right 3 milliseconds so that it lined up with the overheads a lot better. And then here we have the bass where I added the Spectre plugin. And this also adds harmonics to the bass. I boosted at what my favorite thing is 60 or 75. And then here, I didn't use the EQ for anything. And then on the chords, we widened the chords with the Imager. Then we moved into the virtual rack where we're adding that high end and then I'm compressing it. So basically I'm just shifting the tone by shaping the tone by boosting the highs. So now it's not as heavy sounding. And then I'm compressing the sound so that everything feels more even as far as like the volume. And then once we have that wall of sound, I cut out the lows that were conflicting with our bass. So we really didn't do much but EQ and compress this entire track. Okay, so nextly, we're just gonna like add those final touches. Now, hopefully my computer can handle this. So what I'll do is I'll up the buffer length just a little bit. But for the drums, my favorite thing to add is Gold Clip, but I'm gonna add it on the, let's do a sub mix so it doesn't mess with my voice. I'm gonna route all these tracks to a sub mix, which is basically like a master track for you guys. But I'm doing this for the video's sake. Route here. So all my groups are being routed to the submix. On the submix, I'm hitting Alt left to move this in my mixer. We're gonna add Gold Clip. Gold Clip is like that final touch piece. It's great for drums, but I like adding it to my entire track, especially for boom bap hip hop. This thing is a beast of a plugin. The gold knob is insane saturation. Here's without. It just sounds like. Here's after. Okay, so now we gotta manage the clipping here. So I like to check the mid and the sides. Now you got to be really careful about mid and side EQ because you can really make your track feel like two different tracks trying to like blend together. So here I'm trying to be careful here, but on the sides, I'm going to switch this to expert mode. Click here, let's get a side and move this knob to the right. So now we're listening to 100% of the side only. And what I want to do, turn the look ahead up. And then what I want to do is just listen to that low mid frequency from about 200 to 400. So this is the side information. And I want to just see if we have too much energy build up on the sides. Because again, too much energy on the sides can make your track feel actually less engaging, I guess. So it's very subtle. You can't audibly hear it, but it's definitely moving the dynamic on the side. So I'm not overly compressing there. I just want movement because the side gives you a chance to add like small details without affecting the main thing, which is the mono. Let's do it before and after. Here's before. Now, when it comes to like mixing everything at once, it's very important to go back and forth all the time because you're going to be tricking yourself as you're adding effects. You kind of forgot what the original sounds like, and you could easily get lost in adding a bunch of plugins. So I like the A/B frequently. Here's before. I'll let it run all the way through. All right, let's turn the effect back on. Here we go. So one thing that you'll learn when you record vocals is sometimes the muddiness comes from a room mic and not necessarily a frequency. So the overheads is, again, a room mic to me in this case. So I'm going to turn that down if you want less of that room feel. And again, if you want a cleaner sound, we can go back to the virtual mix and turn off the sustain, because this is the texture section here, so I can turn that off. So now it's just the snare. So now I'm going to ease in the room. Let's try the overheads first. I think the overheads are just too sharp. Let's go back to the snare mic. Let's start easing in the sustain here. I turned the room sound down about 50%. So now it's going to be a little bit more drier on the snare, but to make it less dry, we could add a reverb. Or like a delay. Let me show you guys one little delay effect you could try. Let's add the Fruity Delay 3. And we want both dry and wet level. Let's turn the wet level down. Turn the modulation up on the pitch. And then let's turn off tempo sync. It's a little tricky here because we're getting a lot of the signal. If you do want to solo out the snare, and specifically, we could add gate plugins here. So that's another way to kind of fill in the gaps, is that delay. Okay, so we're filling in the gap. Instead of using the room, we're using that delay. I forgot we had this bass sound. So this sound is also kind of interfering with the bass. We could sidechain it to the bass, meaning every time the actual bass hits, we could turn this down. Let me show you guys how to quickly do it. Find your bass, right click, sidechain to this track, go to your bass that you want to turn down, add FabFilter Pro Q3. Let's go to settings, let's go to plugin settings. Let's go to processing, right click your bass as the sidechain input. And now we could set up the sidechain here. We need to turn it on dynamic mode and then hit auto and hit, so it listens to the sidechain here. So we need to figure out where the frequencies overlap. It's usually in this low zone. So now every time that do comes in, it turns down this like aggressive bass. I'm going to turn it down 6 dB. So that way they're not fighting for space. So here I like to push the drums into the clipping device. So we could push the drums. I pushed it like 1 dB. So now I'm just trying to get the energy out of the track by any means here. So now we're going to look into limiters and soft clippers. Something magical about Isotope Ozone's Maximizer, the soft clipper. You could push this thing all the way to the max and it still sounds good. That crunch we hear is the soft clip mode. So high, mid, low. All right, I'm about to make it louder. So as you guys can see, we took care of the transients and the submix. So by the time it comes to the mastering or the like final stage, you could push it even further. I'm pushing it just to show you guys how loud it can get, but I wouldn't push it normally past this point. Let's keep the limiter on, but let's turn the effects off. So let's do it before and after the like individual effects. So this is what most people do, is like slap a limiter on and call it a day, but listen to how much energy we lost. Let's turn the effects back on. So that's a night and day difference. And what I would usually do is kind of sit on this and like go back and listen to it and just see if I added too much of that like low mid room sound or too much snare, too much hi-hat. But the vibe is there. All right. So if you guys want these project files for free, go to busyworksbeats.com/FL-Studio. Join now at premium. You guys can go to either busyworksbeats.com/premium, and you guys will look for the mixing fundamentals course if you're looking to learn how to mix. I'll guide you step by step through EQ, compression, limiting, clipping, getting stuff loud or reverb, delays, how to mix vocals, how to mix acoustic drums, how to mix trap drums, how to mix hip hop. It's all there. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. We have 68 plus music production courses. All right, guys, subscribe if you're new, like this video, share with a friend. Peace.